The security cameras captured everything. Muhammad Ali walking into his hotel room at 3:47 p.m. The maid entering 12 minutes later with her cleaning cart, her hands trembling as she reached for the gold Rolex on the nightstand. And then Ali returning unexpectedly, catching her red-handed with his watch halfway to her cart. What happened in those next 15 minutes would transform two lives forever and create ripples that would help thousands. November 15th, 1981, Memphis. Muhammad Ali was at the Peabody Hotel for a charity event at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. At 39, his Parkinson's symptoms were becoming noticeable, but his heart for helping others burned bright as ever. Maria Elena Santos, 28, the hotel's newest housekeeper, was facing the most desperate crisis of her life. A single mother who had fled El Salvador 8 months earlier, she worked double shifts and lived with her children, Isabella, 4, and Carlos, 6, in a cramped apartment. She was exhausted, broke, but proud of building a new life. 2 days earlier, Carlos had collapsed at school and been rushed to the hospital. The doctors explained he had a serious heart defect. Without immediate surgery, he could die within weeks. The cost $47,000. Maria's insurance wouldn't cover it because Carlos was undocumented. She had $230 and no family who could help. "Your son doesn't have time for charity programs," the social worker explained. "Those have 6-month waiting lists." For 2 days, Maria had worked mechanically while dying inside, watching Carlos try to hide his chest pain. That afternoon, Maria was assigned the presidential suite. She knocked, called housekeeping, and entered when no one answered. Mr. Ali had left for his meeting and wouldn't return until 5 p.m. Maria had cleaned this suite before. She knew about the expensive suits, signed boxing gloves and awards. Muhammad Ali lived a life beyond her imagination. Her mother had raised her with iron discipline about honesty. "We may be poor, but we are not thieves," Rosa Santos would say. But desperation makes mothers consider impossible choices. As Maria dusted the nightstand, her eyes fell on Ali's gold Rolex. It gleamed in the afternoon light. This single watch was worth more than she'd make in 2 years. The terrible thought crept in. That watch could save Carlos's life. For 20 minutes, Maria cleaned around that watch, glancing constantly. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded. The voice in her head grew louder. "Think about Carlos scared in that hospital bed. This rich man has everything. He'd never miss it." Her mother's voice fought back. "We are not thieves, Maria." Back and forth the voices warred in her mind as she worked. By 3:50 p.m., Maria was crying as she cleaned, tears streaming down her face as she battled with herself. She thought about Carlos lying in their shared bed that morning, his breathing shallow and labored, trying to hide how much his chest hurt. At 3:55 p.m., Maria made a decision that went against everything she had ever believed about herself. She walked to the nightstand, her legs feeling like they were made of lead. Her hand reached toward the watch, trembling so violently she could barely control it. She picked up the Rolex, feeling the weight of it in her palm. It was heavier than she expected, solid and real, and worth more money than she had ever held in her life. "For Carlos," she whispered to herself in Spanish. "Forgive me, God, but this is for my son." Maria was just placing the watch in her cleaning cart, hiding it under a stack of fresh towels, when she heard the sound that made her blood freeze in her veins. A key card sliding into the electronic lock. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The watch was halfway into her cart when the door swung open and Muhammad Ali walked into his suite. He moved with the careful gait of someone whose body was no longer fully under his control, but his eyes were sharp and alert. He had returned early from his meeting because he'd forgotten his reading glasses. For a split second that felt like an eternity, Ali didn't understand what he was seeing. His eyes moved from Maria's terror-stricken face to his gold Rolex suspended in her shaking hand, halfway between the nightstand and her cleaning cart. "Oh no," Maria whispered in English, her voice breaking. The watch slipped from her nerveless fingers and clattered to the hardwood floor between them, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent suite like a gunshot. The silence that followed was deafening. Maria stood frozen like a deer caught in headlights, tears already streaming down her face, waiting for Ali to call security, to have her arrested, to destroy the fragile new life she had been trying so desperately to build for her children. But Muhammad Ali didn't reach for the telephone. He didn't shout for help. He didn't call her names or threaten her with prison. Instead, he moved with surprising gentleness, walking slowly across the room and kneeling down to pick up his watch. He examined it carefully, then looked up at Maria with an expression she couldn't read. "What's your name?" Ali asked quietly, his voice carrying none of the anger she had expected. "Maria," she managed to whisper through her tears. Maria Santos. Maria Santos. Ali repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. His famous voice, slightly slurred now from the Parkinson's but still unmistakably his, was gentle despite the circumstances. Can you tell me why? It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a demand. It was a question asked with such unexpected kindness, such genuine curiosity rather than judgment, that Maria's carefully constructed composure completely shattered. She fell heavily into the velvet chair beside the bed and began sobbing with the kind of desperate tears that come from a mother watching her child suffer and being powerless to help. Through broken English mixed with Spanish, through gasps and tears, Maria told Muhammad Ali everything about fleeing her abusive husband in El Salvador, about the dangerous journey to America with her 2 small children, about working double shifts and sleeping on floors, about Carlos and his damaged heart and the surgery he needed to survive, about the $47,000 she didn't have, and the insurance that wouldn't help. Ali listened without interrupting. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaning forward, his own eyes beginning to fill with tears as Maria's story unfolded. When Maria finally finished speaking, they remained in silence for a long moment. How old is Carlos? Ali finally asked, his voice softer than before. 6 years old, Mr. Ali, Maria managed to say between sobs. He is such a good boy. Very smart. He wants to be a doctor someday, to help other children. But now, she couldn't finish the sentence. Ali nodded slowly. And the surgery has to happen soon? The doctors, they say maybe 3 weeks, 4 at most. If not. Maria's voice broke completely. Ali stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Mississippi River. Maria watched him, still terrified, still certain that any moment he would call the manager and her world would collapse completely. Instead, Ali turned back to her and said something that would change the trajectory of both their lives. Maria, I want you to understand something very important. Taking this watch wouldn't have helped your son. Maria looked up at him through her tears, confused. This watch, Ali said, holding up the Rolex. It's worth maybe $15,000, maybe $20,000 if it's in perfect condition. But you would have had to sell it to someone who buys stolen goods, someone who wouldn't ask questions. Those people, they would have given you maybe $3,000, $4,000 if you were very lucky. Not even close to enough for Carlos's surgery. Ali walked closer to where Maria sat, his voice taking on a tone of gentle teaching rather than condemnation. But more than that, Maria, if you had taken this watch, you would have lost something much more valuable than money. You would have lost yourself. The woman who raised 2 children alone, who works 16-hour days, who sends money to her mother, who fled violence to build a better life for her family. That woman is worth more than any watch. That woman has dignity and strength, and honor. That's who you really are. Maria was crying harder now, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief, of recognition, of someone who had been seen and understood rather than judged and condemned. I'm so sorry, Mr. Ali, Maria said, her voice shaking. I never steal nothing before in my whole life. I swear to you. My baby, I don't know what to do. I so scared he going to die. I know, Ali said gently, sitting back down and looking directly into her eyes. And you know what, Maria? I understand completely. When we love someone that much, when our children are in danger, we consider things we never thought we'd consider. We become capable of anything to protect them. That doesn't make you a bad person. That makes you a mother. Ali reached over and gently took Maria's hands in his own trembling ones. The contrast was striking. His large, powerful hands that had once been the fastest in the world, now shaking slightly from disease, holding her small, work-worn hands that trembled from fear and desperation. But here's what we're going to do, Ali said, his voice taking on the commanding tone that had once filled boxing arenas around the world. We're going to find a better way. A way that saves Carlos without losing Maria. First, Ali picked up the telephone beside the bed and dialed a number he knew by heart. Jane, Ali said when his business manager answered. I need you to find out about a little boy named Carlos Santos. He's 6 years old. Needs heart surgery at St. Jude Children's Hospital here in Memphis. I want to know exactly what it costs, which doctors are the best. And I want to know how we can make sure this family gets everything they need. Maria listened in stunned silence as Muhammad Ali, the man she had just attempted to rob, calmly made arrangements to pay for her son's life-saving surgery. Maria, he said after hanging up the phone, you're going to lose your job here at the hotel. You understand that, right? The manager will have to fire you when I tell him what happened. I can't lie about it. That wouldn't be right for either of us. Maria's heart sank. She nodded, understanding that this was the price of her moment of desperation. But Ali continued, and Maria heard hope in that single word. I know people at St. Jude, good people, who understand that sometimes life puts families in impossible situations. I'm going to make some calls. See if they need someone in housekeeping who speaks Spanish and understands what families are going through. He paused, making sure she was following him. The pay is better than here at the hotel. The benefits are much better. Full health coverage for you and both children. And Carlos will get the absolute best medical care in the world, not just for his surgery, but for follow-up appointments, for anything else he might need as he grows up. Maria stared at Muhammad Ali in complete disbelief. Why? She whispered. Why you help me? I try to steal from you. Ali smiled then, the same charismatic smile that had charmed the world for 2 decades, but softer now, more philosophical. Maria, do you know what the hardest fight of my life was? She shook her head, unable to speak. It wasn't against Sonny Liston or Joe Frazier or George Foreman. The hardest fight of my life was against the part of me that wanted to hate people who hurt me, the part that wanted to get revenge instead of understanding. Ali's voice grew softer. I learned something a long time ago, Maria. When someone does something wrong, you have exactly 2 choices. You can make their life worse, or you can make their life better. Making their life worse might feel satisfying for about 5 minutes, but it doesn't change anything. Making their life better, that changes everything. But I don't understand, Maria said through her tears. How you know I won't steal again? Maria, look at me. Really look at me. You think a woman who cries like this over doing something wrong is going to do it again? You're exactly the kind of person who deserves a second chance. 3 weeks later, Carlos underwent successful heart surgery at St. Jude. Ali was there, holding Maria's hand. The surgery was perfect. Carlos would live a normal, healthy life. Maria started at St. Jude the following week, with better pay and comprehensive benefits. She helped other families facing impossible choices. Within 2 years, she was promoted to Family Services Coordinator. Within 5 years, she ran the Hispanic Outreach Program, helping hundreds of families. Ali kept in touch through graduations, citizenship ceremonies, nursing school. When Ali died in 2016, Maria attended his funeral with a letter from Carlos, now 41 and a pediatric cardiologist. Dear Mr. Ali, you saved my life at 6, not just with surgery money, but by showing my mother that one weak moment doesn't erase a lifetime of strength. Because of your kindness, I became a doctor and saved hundreds of children. Thank you for showing us true greatness. Today, the Carlos Santos Family Resource Center at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital serves more than 500 families each year, providing translation services, financial assistance, and emotional support to families facing medical crises. On the wall hangs a photograph from 1982. Muhammad Ali kneeling beside 6-year-old Carlos Santos in his hospital bed, both wearing boxing gloves, both grinning with pure joy. Beneath the photograph is a plaque with Muhammad Ali's most famous quote, "Service to others is the rent we pay for our time here on earth." The story of the hotel maid, who tried to steal Muhammad Ali's watch, reminds us that desperation can drive even good people to consider choices they never thought possible. But it also reminds us that mercy, understanding, and second chances can transform both the giver and the receiver in ways that ripple out through generations. Muhammad Ali could have destroyed Maria Santos with a single phone call. Instead, he chose to see past her desperate act to the loving mother beneath. He chose understanding over judgment, solution over punishment, hope over condemnation. Sometimes the most important fight isn't against an opponent you can see. Sometimes it's against your own impulse to judge rather than understand, to condemn rather than forgive. And sometimes the greatest victory of all is helping someone turn their worst moment into the beginning of their best life. That's true greatness, knowing when to show mercy instead of harsh judgment.